Welcome back, one and all, to another episode of The Damage Report with me, John Iadarola, and very lucky to be joined on the show by one of my favorite people, Mayor of Enfield, North Carolina, as well as the founding principal of the Black Male Voter Project, Mondale Robinson. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you, sir. It's good to have you.
I'm excited to have you here. So everyone out there, I need you to buckle up because we got a lot to talk about, and we've been trying to do a little bit. I don't know, but I'm not gonna go crazy and say a deep dive, but it's not a shallow dive either. It's very much an in the middle dive into a few little like thematic topics. Sometimes I'll like mash up a couple of like state legislative acts or something. So I have an example of that today, and it has to do with Ron Desantis. I mashed up a few of the troubles that he's facing in his not even yet announced run against Donald Trump. So we're gonna have a little bit of fun with that, including a preview of some of the troubles to come for Ron DeSantis. We also are gonna be talking more than you might think about Disney today, multiple times in the first hour as well as in the aftermath. Disney is all over the news. We're gonna be talking about taxes. What do the patriotic millionaires think should happen when it comes to taxes on the uber wealthy? And of course, it's America, so we've got more completely needless and tragic shootings to cover as well. So a lot obviously going on. We're gonna cap off the hour with Marjorie Greene declaring war on a bunch of the other crazies on the right. And our stance on that is always let them fight. So they're fighting, it's getting pretty brutal, and we're going to be breaking it down. In advance of all that though, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button and sharing the stream, that would be great so people know we're live. And if you wanna reach out to us with any tweets, super chats, comments, anything like that, Mondale and I will respond as we go. Particularly insightful or perhaps funny comments might even give you a chance at winning a $100 Blue Apron gift card. So get those comments in. But with all that said, Mondale, are you ready to start the show?
Let's do this.
Okay, let's do it. Let's do it together. Ron DeSantis isn't even technically running against Donald Trump yet, except he is. He's like literally campaigning in swing states on a weekly basis, hawking the book that someone else wrote for him. And despite the fact that he hasn't announced, behind the scenes, a lot is going on. A lot of truly desperate acts of a guy terrified at what has become of his political futures, including his efforts to stop Florida Republicans from endorsing Donald Trump. Again, remember, he's not even technically running. He's never said that he's definitely going to, and yet they are reaching out to all of these Florida Republicans and be like, please stop endorsing Donald Trump. You're killing me. And so the efforts not working great so far. Byron Donalds has endorsed Donald Trump. Had previously been a DeSantis ally, but you see what loyalty is worth, I guess. Anna Paulina Luna, Matt Gaetz, and Corey Mills also have endorsed Donald Trump. That's not super surprising, but all of that, by the way, is before we found out about this behind the scenes full court press to get them to back off and not endorse Trump. That said, let's check in on how the effort is going with GOP representative from Florida, Greg Stube.
He hasn't even been re-elected for 6 months. And while we're in legislative session right now and the state legislature is doing their business, he's in South Carolina and Iowa. I think he's up here in Washington tomorrow meeting with people where his focus should be in Florida. Floridians want him to be focused on Florida. That's what he signed up for his job for re-election to do.
So if that seems to indicate that Greg Stube is no longer a massive fan of the presidential aspirations of Ron DeSantis, telling him to go back to his state and stay there, well, just to clinch it, he just endorsed Donald Trump as well. So that makes 5 Florida Republicans that have now come out and said, before everyone's even announced, that no, we're sticking with Donald Trump. All this nonsense about us moving on or going back to a more responsible Republican Party, screw all that noise. We want Trump. What do you think, Mondale?
Well, I mean, let's be clear, John. Is DeSantis really more responsible as a Republican Party? I think he's as reckless as Donald Trump. He's willing to say more, and he might even be more dangerous because he understands how government works. I'll tell you what's super disgusting. While we see Republicans at the federal level willing to come out and endorse Trump, what's super scary to me are those Florida Republicans in the state legislature that are willing to change Florida's law to make it smooth and easier for DeSantis to run for president, right? Like in Florida, you can't be the nominee for a presidential candidate and also the governor. You have to resign. So they're trying to change the law to make it easier for this scum to come and plenty his scum all over the United States. So I'm a little nervous about DeSantis, not because I feel like he can win on a national scale. I'm just afraid of what Florida is willing to do to make Florida man America man.
Yeah, I'm glad that you pointed that out, because again, there's so much about what happens in Florida that like it's really just about DeSantis, and I kind of feel like the entire state's politics are not supposed to be about one individual. Like his war with Disney, which we're going to talk about, is just about him. It's not about Floridians or whatever. Literally changing the law to make it so that he can run for both. First of all, it's like wildly unfair that you're changing the law for one man. Let's be real. They institute that, and I'm not even saying that law should or shouldn't exist, but it does exist. You put it into effect for a reason. It also, by the way, can we just acknowledge that that's not like a super strong indication of the faith that you have in Ron DeSantis? Like that's allowing him to run and keep his spot. But if you were really confident he was going to win, you wouldn't need the built-in backup of being the governor of Florida. So a little bit pathetic if you ask me. But what I find interesting, and I don't think DeSantis needs to worry about this too much, but you have these congressional Republicans in Florida that are turning on him and endorsing Donald Trump. Wouldn't it be amazing if Donald Trump were behind the scenes to be working on the state legislators in Florida, and when they try to change the law to let DeSantis run, it fails? Can you imagine if he were to win over enough of them with promises of bringing them up to cabinet positions and all that he legally is barred from running? That would be amazing. I don't think that that's going to happen, but I like to fantasize sometimes, Mondale.
No, I think, but in your fantasy, I think you point out some amazing things. The idea that that Ron DeSantis is at war with Disney. You can't make sense of making war with Disney if you are the governor of Florida. We're talking about the largest single employer in your state, and you're making war because they said something they wanted to say. Think about this. We're talking about the Republican Party, free speech party. You can't tell businesses that they can't sell gay people cakes and flowers for their wedding. But now you can tell the mouse who he can and can't represent or protect because he's anti your regressive policy. So I think it's hilarious to see DeSantis and the state legislatures show up in this manner. And like you said, you never know what Trump is trumping. So it may be possible that he could, convince some of these Republicans, hey, this is a sinking sail, and while DeSantis can win in Florida, all the polls say he cannot win nationally, and it just keeps getting worse for him.
Yeah. And by the way, I don't even look. I don't really want them to stop him from running because I think that if he runs against Trump, it's going to be hilarious. But that said, I feel obligated to just say, if any Florida state legislators are watching the Damage Report right now, like, you don't think there's at least a good chance that Trump is going to see what you do when you allow DeSantis to run against him? Does he seem like the sort of person to hold a grudge? Now, maybe you're thinking, I'm gonna be in the legislature for like 4-6 more years before I try for anything else, and Donald Trump will probably croaked by then. But is that the gamble that you want to make on your political future? Something to think about. That said, let's move to another aspect of this. Ron DeSantis is having trouble getting Florida Republicans to endorse him, but he also might have some trouble in the future when it comes to donors, because some of them are apparently starting to sour on him. Top Republican donor Thomas Petterfy is halting plans apparently to help finance Ron DeSantis's bid for the presidency, apparently due to his extreme positions on social issues. Quote, "I have put myself on hold," the billionaire told the Financial Times, "because of his stance on abortion and book banning. Myself and a bunch of friends are holding our powder dry." By the way, like the fact that he doesn't support DeSantis's positions on abortion and book banning, I like that. I feel like you could throw a few more things in there. I mean, all the anti-trans stuff and the obvious racism and everything. Like, if you're already hitting the guy, at least mention some of the other terrible things. Maybe he doesn't have a problem with that. I don't know. But anyway, he did say it's not just him, it's a bunch of his friends. And when a billionaire says a bunch of his friends, he just means the other rich people in the area. That's all that means. They're not getting together to play bridge or something. And he's pretty significant. He's the second richest man in Florida. Up until very recently, he was the richest man in Florida. Just in 2022, he gave $7.7 million to individual Republican campaigns and conservative PACs. That was up from 7.2 million in 2020, which is the sort of money one person spends in politics that immediately tells me that their taxes aren't high enough. But anyway, I think it's interesting that his donors are starting to back off Mondale, and in particular, citing his culture war stances, which are like exactly why some, I think, deluded, poor conservatives like DeSantis in the first place.
Yeah, and I think you see now they have this. The Republican Party has come to this point where, okay, you're gonna serve the money donors or you're gonna serve the people, and the base is what you need in the Republican primary to get out of the primary. So at this point, I guess DeSantis is saying these donors can go bye-bye because I need to win the base, and to win the base, you got to out-Trump Trump. The problem with that is you need money to out-Trump Trump because Trump's gonna generate a lot of free press, which he did. He generated billions of dollars worth of free press in his first presidential run. So what DeSantis is up against is reality. Reality. You're trying to out-Trump Trump in a game that you can't win because donors are scared of you. Plus, you have no national record, and your backbone isn't really there. We've seen people push back on policies, and you fail epically.
Yeah.
And I think it would be important if people don't forget that the reason he became governor in 2018 is a fault of the Democratic Party, not because some excellent race he was winning. He was losing that race up until a few weeks, according to the polls. But if you saw how Democrats performed in the primary, they outperformed Republicans in the primary in 2018. And Andrew Gillum was poised to win that election, except for he turned over his entire field team that had just won him in the primary with record turnout to the Democratic Party, and that was a bad idea because they weren't knocking on doors, and when they were using whitewashed messaging to reach. I mean, you were sending regular English language to completely black communities that were Haitian-speaking communities. So these people don't even speak English, and you're sending them lit. This is why we saw 13% of black women in Florida, vote against Andrew Gillum in 2018. Bad policies, bad practices on the Democratic Party put DeSantis in place. That's not gonna happen on a national level because there's gonna be so much money spent against him if he was to beat Donald Trump.
Yeah, by the way, I am so glad that you brought that up because you're right. Like everybody thinks about this last election. They're like, oh, DeSantis was always gonna win. It's a super red district. It was a super close race anyway. It was totally winnable. And I don't wanna go off on a long tangent, but imagine how much would be different right now if that race had gone differently. Not only would Ron DeSantis, I don't know, maybe he'd be running again next time, but that would probably be the extent of his national platform. We wouldn't have the 6-week abortion ban in Florida, all the nonsense that's happened with trying to destroy schools and ban the teaching of history and everything. Oh, you wouldn't have Ron DeSantis been unilaterally creating a redistricting map that sent multiple congressional seats to the Republicans. Like either the Republican majority in the House right now would be incredibly minor, 1 or 2 people, or it might even be flipped if not for that. So, man, the Democrats love to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. Anyway, really fast, just to end on Petterfy, he says that if DeSantis continues to appeal to a far-right base of the Republican Party to defeat Trump by banning books or restricting abortion access, quote, the Republicans have a very big problem. Well, it's certainly gonna be a big problem for DeSantis if he is the nominee running in a national election. He's the guy that effectively entirely outlawed abortion in an entire state. Petterfy, by the way, says he doesn't even think Trump can win the next election, but he's willing to sit out and let Trump be the nominee if that's what it takes to put pressure on DeSantis, which I think is interesting. And here's the thing, Petterfy is a billionaire, and billionaires generally get almost everything that they want in America. That's the way that things are set up. But if what he wants is for Ron DeSantis to back off of the culture wars, I think for the first time he is going to be disappointed, because I just happened across this today. Fox News reporting that Team DeSantis has put out a new parody video mocking Bud Light for supporting women's sports. I am not going to play this video because it's utterly gross. But here's the basic idea. It's titled Real Men of Women's Sports. It parodies the old Real Men of Genius campaign from the company from the late 1990s and early 2000s. It says Team DeSantis presents Real Men of Women's Sports and then begins to attack Leah Thomas and other transgender athletes, saying that they are the real men of sports. They have found a way to hack the system so that they can win. And now women's sports doesn't have real women winning anymore. It just says, you'll notice, by the way, that they're mentioning one actual name. That's literally the only name they can come up with. The rest of it's all incredibly vague because this is a made up problem that doesn't actually exist in the real world. But this is what Ron DeSantis, the reasonable Republican, the not threatening or dangerous Republican, is using his time for. Once again, weighing in on a culture war topic that has absolutely nothing to do with him or his state, and being willing to increase the threat of harassment, violence, and even murder for transgender people because he thinks it might help him close the gap a bit with Trump. It's gross. What do you think, Mondale?
I think you're spot on. I think what's also telling is, listen, let's not disconnect this world from the past world, right? I'm talking about the banning of books and how extreme this really is. This billionaire may not be saying it for a good reason, but it's absolutely devastating. And we should acknowledge that the first time we started banning books, Southerners started believing that that the rebels that fought against the Union, right, the Confederacy, was a lost cause effort. It was a states' rights effort, and not because of slavery. And I mean, this was the power of banning books in the South, throughout the South. United Daughters of Confederacy ran this campaign that was super successful. They created a book list that said to libraries and schools, like, these are the books that you should ban if they say this about rebels, or if they call them rebels, and not if they so all of this has ramifications and it looks the same. And Desantis is not divorced from this information. He understands the culture war that he's playing, and he's willing to gamble at that because, one, he's raising a ton of money doing this. His super PAC just bought a seven-digit ads bin, and he's not even announced presidency yet. Yeah, so, wow. I mean, this idea that you can mock people, it doesn't matter as long as it's other than white people that you're mocking. And not just white people, those who support and believe in the idea of white supremacy, whiteness. And he's going along with that, even in a state that shouldn't even be, a red state at all. But like I said, like you said, from the lack of effort from people on our side, we allow people like this to be in office.
Yeah.
We should also mention, John, before we go off this topic, that Desantis is also the governor that's actually locking people up for voting when his state supposedly gave people with felony conviction the right to vote again, and then are telling these people to register, but locking some of them up because they have felony convictions that are violent or related to violent crimes. That is absolutely voter suppression in the craziest form.
100%. His efforts to disenfranchise people's vote is so ridiculous that even in Florida, when they were going, some of these cops, to lock up people of color for voting, the cops were like, this is ridiculous. You have to be pretty extreme to get the cops to have a problem with it in Florida, and they did. Really fast, before we move on to our last aspect, I also want to mention that Trump has hired a former top DeSantis ally who apparently wants nothing more than to destroy DeSantis now. This is Susie Wiles. I'm gonna keep it real. I don't know anything about her. She's apparently really important to DeSantis in the past. According to Roger Stone, she knows where DeSantis's bodies are buried. I don't know what's gonna come of this, but I am tantalized by it, I will say that. Anyway, let's turn to one other aspect of this. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis has announced that the next phase of his personal crusade against Disney, one of the main employers in his state, is going to escalate quickly. So you might recall that he tried to take over their sort of like independent operating body that controlled that area. And then they had this last minute clever little legal maneuver that allowed them to retain control. He doesn't like that because it makes him look ridiculous, and everybody on the internet laughed at him. So now he's gonna try to just nullify it. He says Disney's sloppy and futile attempt to subvert the will of the legislature and Floridians, yeah, lots of Floridians desperately care about this, was uncovered by our state oversight board, and their 11th hour agreements will be nullified by the legislature. Disney's corporate kingdom is over. I will just remind you that while I am all for regulation of corporations, it generally is not supposed to be the case that the government just goes on an extended vendetta against one individual corporation for purely personal reasons. That's not really how our government is supposed to work. You don't like the little tricky pizzicky thing that they did, but they did it. And now the state legislature is gonna weigh in so that you can stick it to this very popular company in your state that generates a bunch of tax revenue and hires a bunch of people. Okay, well, it goes beyond just the nullification. He said, come to think of it now, people are like, well, what should we do with this land? Maybe we'll create a state park. Maybe try to do more amusement parks. Someone even said, like, maybe you need another state prison. I mean, who knows? I mean, I just think that the possibilities are endless. So he's talking about building a state prison next to Disney or another amusement park, which will definitely be competitive against Disney. He's also talking about just raising their taxes, raising an individual company's taxes as his entire party's ideology is that corporate taxes shouldn't exist in the first place. There's a little bit of a muddling of the ideology going on here, Mondale.
Listen, first of all, the statement was nothing but lies, and we'll get to that. Isn't Florida where people go because they don't want to pay income taxes? Isn't that the purpose? Isn't that why so many rich people live in Florida? So I think this is absolutely disgusting. It's also the doublespeak that shows us that the Republican Party does not have principles beyond anyone that does not agree with them 100%. They will come out to anything using any tactics. We saw this a long time ago. Ronald Reagan, as governor of California, enacted the first gun restriction laws in that state, right? When Black Panthers showed up to the Capitol with guns, he did this. Now Ron DeSantis is showing up the same way against Disney, anti-Disney, because Disney is seen anti-them, even though Disney is still giving money to Republicans throughout the state. This is what's gonna hamstring him, and I don't think he understands the power of Disney in Florida when you're starting to. Like I think your legislature might miss the mark, and you may try something, but what the backlash is going to be will be no governor from the Republican Party for a while, because Disney's going to withhold all their resources from them. Let me say one more thing about Ron DeSantis. He has a bigger problem. You breezed over it, John, but it's a big deal. Susie Wild in Florida against DeSantis is problematic. She is the reason Trump won Florida the way he did twice. She is not to play with. She is the Republican snake in the state, and Florida has a lot of snakes. I mean, it is the home. It is the home. But I mean, honestly, this is a powerful lobbyist, a powerful Republican strategist who has relationships not just in Florida, but with donors outside. And I bet you some of these conversations where donors are saying, "Hold off," or "We're holding off," or "We're thinking," is all about that. Because she's probably having conversations saying Trump don't care about half the stuff he's saying. He just want to win. Whereas DeSantis is legislating this stuff, and that track record of legislating hate is going to cause him and the Republican Party any serious conversation or looks on a national scale. So I'm super excited about Susie being over there with Donald Trump.
Okay.
I'm also happy that DeSantis is at war with the mouse.
Yeah. Well, as we're about to get to very briefly, the mouse is striking back. By the way, glad to have you on today because you have that perspective on Susie Wiles. I wasn't personally familiar with her. But here's the issue. So DeSantis trying to stick it to Disney once again. He really thinks that one of these days he's gonna come out of this looking cool. Well, he's got two Disney related hits coming against him. One coming from Donald Trump, who bleated, "DeSantis is being absolutely destroyed by Disney." This is this morning, by the way. His original PR plan fizzled, so now he's going back with a new one in order to save face. Disney's next move will be the announcement that no more money will be invested in Florida because of the governor. In fact, they could even announce a slow withdrawal or sale of certain properties or the whole thing. Watch, that would be a killer. In the meantime, this is all so unnecessary, a political stunt. Ron should work on the squatter mess. Trump is 100% right. That's weird. Well, I didn't feel quite right. It is a stunt. Of course, Trump engages in these sorts of stunts constantly. That's all it is. So he's getting hit. By the way, you know what Disney just announced? The first ever Disneyland After Dark Pride Night is coming to Disneyland during Pride Month in June. This separately ticketed event celebrating the first LGBTQIA+ community and allies will have themed entertainment, Disney characters, specialty menu items, and more. Suck it, Puddin' Ron. They didn't say that in the tweet, but I feel like that was the subtext, the subtweet, if you will. Anyway, Mondale, any further thoughts?
I love how Trump will call someone out for doing exactly what Trump would do, but it works for him. Like this guy there's no shame with Trump. The fact that he's calling out DeSantis, and let's be honest, this is absolutely spot on. Trump is spot on. This is a political stunt. This idea that you're gonna get rid of Disney or hurt Disney or that Disney's stock is failing is a lie. They're doing wonderful. They're putting out movies that are making more money than ever. And this is just opening up people's idea of the park. People that may have not thought about Disney in June because Florida's too hot will definitely be there for the Pride Night. So I think DeSantis will lose, and Trump is absolutely right. I don't think Disney is gonna pull out of Florida. I think they're just gonna make DeSantis look like an idiot by making more money and being more successful in his state as he waged war on them, and they just continue to ignore him, or as you say, tell him to suck it.
100%. Okay, we're gonna take our first break, everyone. When we come back, we're gonna be talking about some millionaires calling for higher taxes on millionaires. They'll make the case after this. Okay, everybody. I'm gonna look at more into this this special night. I might have to go. Disney's like a whole big thing. I can only do it a few times a year, but yeah, I might go again. Okay, everybody, let's see what's going on out there in the comments. First of all, I want to mention one of the YouTube comments that I saw right after the stream started from Hawkeye, who says, "Hey John, my wife told me that you looked like Mike Lindell when your hair was long. Shivers. Glad you changed back. Dear God, am I, apparently, if I look like, does Mike Lindell even have long hair? Why did I look like Mike Lindell? Anyway, was I holding a pillow? Maybe I was holding a pillow. Anyway, Stephen Alleman, welcome to Tier 1 membership. Glad to have you aboard over on YouTube. Rialan, welcome back to Tier 2 membership. Glad to have you here as well. At Tier 2 membership, of course, you get our weekly top 10 list that Francesca Fiorentini and I put out. Also, early heads up that for the Tier 3 members on YouTube, we will be doing our monthly member hangout this Thursday, a half an hour after the show ends. So pencil that into your calendar. Thank you to CDN Norse Dog Dad for gifting 5 Damage Report memberships. Super nice of you. And disappointing DBD gifted 1 as well. Thank you so much. Okay, let's see what's going on. Felicity, the Twitch chat says, Mondale always makes for a great time. Patricia says, woot! Mondale, thank you for that, everybody. Old Dion sent in a super chat saying, mad love to Mayor Mondale for repping NC in such a positive way. Lol, we definitely need it. Shout out to you too, Dragon Dad. Thank you, thank you. How are things out in North Carolina these days? How's it going?
I mean, listen, I think what we're seeing is the more ideas that I put forward, the larger the resistance. And guess what? What we already know, John, is it's not just from the Republicans. I have a Democratic governor who refuses to really launch a real investigation into the white supremacists that are sending death threats to me. He said 6 months ago that they already launched an investigation into it, yet and still the death threats that came as form of mail to my house, to my office, has not been picked up. I've not been interviewed. Nobody's been interviewed by the SBI. However, when I tore down the Confederate monument, the SBI came to interview me 3 times because they're investigating me about what gave me the right to tear down the monument. So we still are dealing with that mess. And also progressive ideas seems to be where North Carolina stops on their support of blackness.
Well, sorry to hear that. It's devastating. I feel like, we were sort of wondering, what their position is if they're not investigating the white supremacist death threats. But if they immediately investigate you for taking down a Confederate memorial, I kind of feel like I do know their position on white supremacy. Anyway. Let's see. Smiling Dragon sent you a super chat saying, did you see where a video was played in Florida schools celebrating Confederacy history, supposedly celebrated annually? I am not familiar with that, but I'm also not particularly surprised by that. Jesus. Kurt Von A says, Disney has it in for Desantis because he's effing goofy. You know what, Kurt Von A? You just want a Blue Apron gift card, assuming you haven't already had one. But if you haven't, send an email to rewards@tyc.com with your first and last name, as well as your handle, and they'll set you up with the Blue Apron gift card. That was hilarious. By the way, and again, to the extent, so TYT, I guess, is sponsored by Blue Apron. We do these promotions and everything. I do Blue Apron every week, my wife and I. I'm not personally endorsed by Blue Apron. It's not free, like I pay for it or whatever. I had this spinach artichoke gnocchi last night through it. My God, that was good. I cook so much more thanks to Blue Apron. Again, they don't give me a single dollar or anything like that. I just really love them and would like for them to pay me. Anyway, we got more news coming, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this. Really fast, I mentioned in that break that I had made spinach artichoke gnocchi, and someone, Dragon Bear, typed ew. How dare you, Dragon Bear? It was delicious. Don't you attack my gnocchi. Anyway, with that said, let's turn from gnocchi to taxes, starting with this.
7 out of 10 Americans say our democracy is under dire threat. The number one reason, 86% of those across the partisan spectrum, no difference, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, 86% say the reason is money in politics.
Feel like we've been saying that for a little while. What you just saw there was a clip from the Patriotic Millionaires Summit. You might be familiar with this group, but for some time they have come together to try to advocate as people with great economic privilege for tax policy and other policies that don't so singularly advantage the wealthiest people in America. They call themselves wealthy Americans leading the charge to raise taxes on the rich, fight for a livable wage, and combat political and income inequality. And the speaker that you just saw there was saying that effectively the money in politics gives them incredibly outsized influence over politics. We say outsized. The only real position on politics that matters outside of campaigns. Biden might run as a progressive or whatever because he knows he wants young voters to vote for him. But what they do once they're actually in office has effectively, well, according to Princeton University, it has near zero impact on US law. But there are obviously things affecting the law. And I think that speaker has pointed out what it actually is. It's the actual money in politics and the interests of the wealthy. And they have long advocated for their interests and they've gotten it. As of right now, the wealthiest Americans pay on average just 3.4% of their income in taxes. The people who can afford it most pay it least. And even when it's not just raw tax policy, you might be shocked at how much things have been set up for them. Even in the area of deductions for charity, here's a little bit more from the summit.
When we talk about philanthropy, we really should think about it as a tax issue. For every dollar a billionaire gives to charity, we as taxpayers chip in 74 cents in lost tax revenue. Now, how is this possible? How is this possible? Because billionaires not only are reducing their income tax, they're also reducing their estate taxes, their gift tax, their capital gains tax. So it's a huge subsidy. And the problem is the wealth doesn't just go directly to the charities, but actually huge amounts of it are being diverted into, we call them intermediaries, private foundations, donor advised funds that are essentially controlled by those donors. And those funds can sit parked for generations in these intermediaries. So the donors get an immediate tax reduction the year they give the money, but it can sit for a long time.
Exactly. Like I'm sure there's a millionaire that's given some money to charity just out of the goodness of their heart, but often it's for the tax incentives for individuals as well as corporations. By the way, we've previously talked about on the show why it's become so common that when you like check out at a CVS, it's asking for you to chip in money to a charity. Like it makes you feel good, I guess, that you've done the charity, but they use that for tax write-offs. Basically, if you want to give the charity, do it independently. Don't do it at the counter because that's like it already is cutting the value of the philanthropy. And so there's a lot of issues that are being raised here. I think we can all agree that tax policy has largely been determined by the interests of the wealthy in the past. I'm glad to see them raising the profile of that issue. Mondale, what do you think about all this?
Listen, and this is not something I didn't know, but just hearing that again, Bill Gates started the Gates Foundation. And then he could take all of his money and put it in the Bill Gates Foundation that him and his wife were running, and it could just sit there forever. So I am disgusted with the idea that they give 36 cents, really. They're not giving $1, they're giving 36 cents, and we're giving the bulk of that. Poor people are paying for the rich people to get tax breaks. That is absolutely disgusting to me, especially when we see during a time like COVID, during a pandemic, where poverty grew and also their wealth grew. These richest people in America got richer during COVID, while poor people got poorer. And just knowing that they financed that tax breaks on our backs is absolutely disgusting to me, John. So bad.
Yeah. 100%. As you point out, that they get the tax breaks, but that also that they get to look cool. They get to look like they're the charitable ones. So it's an issue like during your life. And I'll just briefly mention something that I've talked about before. There's like the pledges to give away their wealth when they die. And like lots of people are like, oh, that's so nice. It's so charitable. You're not gonna give it to your kids. I guess you're dead though. You got to use it for as long as you could. And now you're giving away. Look, I guess that's better than not giving it away, but just barely. It doesn't have anything to do with you anymore. You're dead. You can't use it. Give it away now, okay? And maybe that's too much to ask. Maybe you need a little buffer where you get to enjoy your ability to buy islands at the drop of a hat or something. But every minute between now and when you die, the longer you wait, the less I give a damn about your charity, because it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't affect you. It's giving if you've given. Once you're dead, you can't give anymore. Anyway, we have one other topic to get to, and that was raised at the Patriotic Millionaire Summit, and that has to do with private jets. They're still all over the place. They briefly got talked about more during the pandemic, especially when celebrities would use them for like little micro flights and everything. They're still doing all that stuff, just to be clear. Take a look at this.
Flying on a private jet is like cocaine. It is the coolest method of travel I've ever experienced, and it's tough. But I'm kind of having a moment with my jet, and I'm really seriously considering selling it because I'm challenged to square my concern about the environment and my place in mankind to continue to be so phenomenally selfish to be able to get on a jet all by myself for room for 7 or 8 more people in there. I'm in there all by myself except for the pilots, and I just don't think it's right. And I've got it for sale, so we'll see.
Okay, like small amount of credit. Why are people clapping? Like, he still has it. He's still using it. All he said was like, I'm starting to feel like this is a bit too much. And people are like, yes, yeah, no, this is not the end of the movie, slow clap or whatever. The dude's gonna put down the mic, drive his fancy car to the private airport and get back on the plane. Like, maybe he'll give it up. And look, at least he's talking about it. Most of them don't even want you to know that they're doing all of this, that they're flying from Burbank to LAX or to whatever when they could, be driving. But I don't know, I'm not gonna give a ton of credit for the guy who literally still has the plane, Mondale. What do you think?
John, come on, like you didn't think about the environment when you paid that much for the jet? Like right now, like it just hit you at this summit. You just realized what kind of damage you were doing and how selfish you were being. Come on, guys. Like, listen, even if he sells the jet, guess what he's gonna do? He's still gonna lease one because he's not gonna fly commercial. He's not talking about buying a ticket or getting a membership on Southwest. That's not what we're hearing right here. Trust me.
Yeah.
I have little credit. The fact that he got a round of applause for this is where we are in this country. People are looking and people are really being celebrated for something like you said. This goes back to the charitable thing. You're not being charitable when you're talking about selling or thinking about selling your private jet. Tell us, really, the idea of having or giving away your money when you die makes no sense to me. Okay, you got $56 billion. Keep one. Imagine what change you can make in your life with $55 billion. That's the type of change. This country used to tax people. Everything over, I think, a couple $1 million was taxed in the 40s at 90%, bro. 90%. And now we're down to 3.4%. That's why our deficit is expanding. This is why we owe so much, and why our social net safety net is crashing.
Yeah, and they were still getting wealthy, even with those taxes. They were still incentivized to work. But anyway, again, the guy's one of the patriotic millionaires, so he's better than the others. But just I love the idea of the guy like reclining in his massive seat. He takes the last bite of his creme brulee, sip of champagne, and thinks, "Am I the baddie?" You're doing okay. You're doing okay. Anyway, I'm having a moment with my plane is not anything I've ever had to say in my life. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna jump into this next topic right now. The hour is racing by. Okay, let's talk about this for a little bit. The governor of Oklahoma is now seeking the resignation of 4 different county officials after some truly appalling audio recordings have been released of explicitly racist comments being made on the one hand, and then vague allusions to the possibility of murdering journalists as well. It's weird stuff, scary stuff. We're gonna jump into this first clip. Here's the pretty explicit racism for you.
It was back in the day when Alan Marshall take a damn blackjack, whoop their ass and throw them in the cell, I'd run for sheriff.
Yeah, well, it's not like that no more.
I know. We're taking them down here on Mud Creek and hang them up with the damn rope.
Yeah.
But you can't do
the
that.
Thing about it,
they got more rights than we got.
Okay, that was between Sheriff, his investigator Alicia Manning, Commissioners Mark Jennings, Robert Beck, Commissioner Secretary Heather Carter, and Jail Administrator Larry Hendricks. And although a little bit of that is hard to follow, a little bit garbled, They have more rights than we do is always a fun thing for someone like this to throw out there. And then of course there are references to lynching people. So yeah, I think some resignations probably should be the ground floor for the consequences we should see from this. Mondale, what do you think?
Every case tried under this administration should be brought back up. The DA or the sheriff, anybody implicit or that's been locked up because of this. If you're black, you just got you a little reason to call a lawyer and say, look, racism had a role in what happened to me. This person believes that because you can no longer string me up like mud or over a mud lake or throw me in a cell and beat me, then I have more rights than them. It also is a time that he misses. So why is this person having the right to oversee anyone? This is the problem. This idea is the problem with our policing system in this country. It is people harboring these thoughts that black people having the right to challenge systems is more rights than them. What they're really saying is they have more rights than they should as black people. You shouldn't have the right to question, because America for a long time believed that black people had no rights that a white man was obligated to listen to or respect. And this gentleman just said the same thing on tape.
Yeah, they have more rights than us just means they have rights. And I hate that. That's unacceptable. Something needs to be done about it. But that wasn't the end of it. There was also a discussion about their plans to potentially murder 2 Gazette reporters, Chris and Bruce Willingham. Take a look at this.
They're insignificant in my life.
Yes.
Really, they bring that
Don't
to my
say this,
table.
you
What comes around goes around it.
It will. I told you it will.
Yeah.
I know where 2 big deep holes are if you ever need them.
I got an excavator.
Well, these are pre-dug. Yeah, but the thing of it is,
We actually told the truth.
I've known 2 or 3 hitmen that were very quiet guys.
Yeah.
And would cut no mercy.
Yeah.
Okay, that's county officials talking about digging deep holes and talking about the hitmen that they know. So it's not just devastating, obviously, the fact that you would joke about or talk about killing journalists or whatever, but like, so if you know these hitmen, why are they just out there existing? Feel like they should maybe be locked up. Why do I need to tell these officials what their job is supposed to be? Now, the governor, Kevin Stitt, who I can see people in the chat are like, Stitt definitely agrees with all this. I'm not familiar with Kevin Stitt very much, but he says, I am both appalled and disheartened to hear of the horrid comments made by officials in McCurtain County. There's simply no place for such hateful rhetoric in the state of Oklahoma, especially by those that serve to represent the community through their respective office. And there's also a long statement from the sheriff's office. I'm not sure we're gonna be able to get to, but there was a big protest trying to put pressure on them to do something. So we'll see what happens, Mondale. Any final thoughts about what you've heard?
I mean, listen, we have a governor, right? That like the comment said, absolutely, shows and exemplifies behaviors that it lines up with this. The idea, though, we have county and law enforcement who's supposed to be out here against these thugs, bragging about knowing 2 or 3 hitmen that won't cut these journalists any slack is absolutely disgusting. And someone needs to investigate who these hitmen and who have they hit.
Yeah. By the way, I don't know for sure. This is a bit of speculation on my part, but my guess would be that every one of those people that you just heard who are talking about lynching black people and murdering journalists support the elimination of abortion rights because of their deeply held Christian religious beliefs. After all, they're pro-life and thou shalt not kill, except if it's someone of a different race or a journalist who's investigating you, then there's a couple of exceptions. I think that's in the subtext of the 10 Commandments. It was worn away by wind and time, but it was probably there. Anyway, we're gonna see what happens with that. We do have a lot more to get to, but first a break. We'll be back in a few. Oh, the news, everybody. You learn some crazy things. Anyway, okay, Jason said in the YouTube chat, you pay a company because you're too lazy to look through a cookbook. Come on, John. No, I don't pay a company because I'm too lazy to look through a cookbook. I pay a company because I'm too lazy to go through the produce section at a supermarket. No, it's really convenient, and I worked it out. I think it's cheaper actually, honestly, than me going out and buying all that stuff. Lots of vegetables are kind of expensive. Anyway, to each their own is what I say, and it's delicious. Jenny Kelly says, I really liked you with long hair. You definitely looked better than Mike Pillow. Well, one would hope so, but I'm not taking any chances. If it's a conversation that's being had, I will buzz my head. Anyway, okay, let's see. Matthias says they need a Blue Apron Pop-Tart recipe. They might do that. They do like separate desserts or whatever. I've never done any of that stuff, but you can get breakfasts and desserts. I've never done that though. Arthur Ashbrook says in the super chat, hi John and Mondale, how are you today? Today's my birthday. I'm happy to be here with y'all. And 31, time is flying. I feel like I just turned 18 the other day and I'm already 31. I can't believe it, LOL. Arthur, yeah, you're telling me. The time, man, it just flies and every year flies faster than the year before it. All of you young people have heard old people say this before. Well, you know what? So did I when I was young and it was meaningless to me too, but it's true, man. You look back and you think the 2016 election was 7 years ago. My God, it feels like yesterday. Whew. Anyway, Mondale, life's tough. Okay, Patricia Swan. 25 months over on Twitch. Thank you for being here. We appreciate it. Perf Cell's been here for 27 months, says woohoo. Woohoo to you too, thank you. Depressed Progressive's been here for 34 months, says sharing my subiversary with the mayor and John. Thank you so much. PDX Bellasaurus, been here for 27 months, says so much appreciation for you, John and team. Thank you, the team does amazing work. I'm actually going to be, once this show is done, I'm gonna be recording some special content for the Damage Reports TikTok and Instagram. That was put together by producer Ashley. So yes, they're hard at work at all points, and much appreciated. The Targeted Scapegoat has been here for 26 months. Says 2 years and 2 months since 2IT delivered me in the socio-political NICU. Now I look like a genuine toddler and not like an old man with pattern baldness like I did when I was first born. That was evocative. Targeted Scapegoat, thank you. Dear God. Burning Bush Dragon has been here for 20 months. Says, I love Mondale. I always enjoy his takes. Thank you. I do as well. Jay-Z from Boston's been here for 7 months. Thank you so much. Jason Ray says at some point the whole barrel is rotten. Yeah, I don't know if that is a reference to the Oklahoma story. I imagine it is. It is one thing if you caught like one of these people journaling these awful things. But what does the culture have to be like that you feel comfortable saying this stuff in like mixed company with just a bunch of people? You think it's totally cool. You can talk about lynching people and like nobody's gonna have a problem in this room. My God. I remember really fast, when I first got to Texas, I was waiting to meet up with like the one person I knew in Austin in a bar. And I sat at the bar waiting for them. And this guy sat down next to me and started talking about the Yankees, which already annoyed me because I don't do sports that much. And then he just dropped the N-word in reference to the players of, I think it might have been the Yankees. And I just thought, what vibe am I putting out that you think you can do? You don't know me, man. You've been here 5 seconds and you're dropping that? It made me deeply think about myself and what I was giving off. Anyway, more news. Oh geez, everybody. Okay, well, I need you to prepare yourself for some truly tragic news. We've got a little bit of lighter stuff coming up. Don't worry about that. But first, this. A 20-year-old woman was shot and killed by a homeowner in upstate New York on Saturday after the car she was in accidentally turned into the wrong driveway. And the time it took them to back out and turn around, the guy came out and shot and eventually killed her. Kaylin Gillis is the woman. You can see a photo of her here from a GoFundMe. In America, our health insurance system is such garbage that this sort of thing is necessary. So if you want to give, it is available. Kaylin Gillis was with 3 of her friends trying to find another friend's house in rural Hebron, New York, when they mistakenly pulled up to the house owned by 65-year-old Kevin Monahan. They quickly realized their mistake and were turning the car around when he stepped onto his porch and fired 2 shots, one of which struck Gillis. They had to drive 5 miles to the town of Salem to be able to call 911. The reception wasn't good in that area. CPR was performed, but she was pronounced dead on the scene. One of the sheriffs involved in this says it's a very sad incident involving an innocent young woman. There was clearly no threat from anyone in the vehicle. There was no reason for Monahan to feel threatened. He wasn't aware of any interaction between them. No one exited the vehicle, and it was in the driveway for a very short time. Monahan has thankfully already been charged with murder in the 2nd degree and remains in custody. He was initially uncooperative with investigators, refusing for several hours to exit his residence or answer questions. I don't know all of the state laws in New York. I am hoping that because it's not like Texas or Florida or something, that this should be illegal in some states. It would really be an open question as to whether you can just begin firing shots randomly at someone who happened to be in your driveway. The sheriff there said, Mondale, that there was no reason to feel threatened. And that's what I question. Not that there was anything particular about Gillis or her friends or just being in the driveway, but gun owners are given reasons every single day in America to be terrified of literally everything. They are constantly told that you need to defend your territory. It's your castle. People are coming for you, immigrants and whoever. Black Lives Matter and MS-13 and everybody is just waiting to storm across your yard and break into your foyer. So you need to be ready to go out there and shoot first and ask questions. Will probably never. They'll ask you questions when they haul you in. They never talk about the legal process after that, but this life was totally needlessly lost. Young person just trying to go to a friend's house, and it is a crapshoot. Pardon the terminology of when you come up on a person's house, whether they're going to be an absolutely insane person with access to military grade hardware. What do you think?
John, in any other industrialized nation, this young lady will still be alive.
Yep.
Nowhere in the world except for America do you make a mistake and turn around in someone's driveway and you leave dead. You leave dead for turning into the wrong driveway. This is absolutely ridiculous. Last year, this country sold and purchased more than 15.6 million guns. Already this year, more than 12,000 people have died from guns. In this country alone, we're not talking about across the world. We have a problem that this country is not willing to deal with. And I'm telling you, the idea that they're selling fear to these people with so many guns is absolutely ridiculous. We can almost tell what party people are by how many guns they own. There's studies that show if you are a member of the NRA, 77% are Republicans. If you are a member of NRA, 77+% are white, and they own 5.6 guns each member. We are ridiculously killing people that don't have to die because of the selling of fear to people with this much ammunition. People are killing people for this idea that they feel threatened, and the threat is never there, has never been there, and is not real. It's not grounded in anything other than politicians and people that need to sell guns doing just that, selling themselves and selling guns.
They tell us that everyone will be safer if everybody just has a gun. And in case after case, the only thing that turned it into a tragedy was that someone regrettably had a gun. In this case, if that guy had just, let's say that there was never gonna be a world where he wasn't constantly terrified of literally everyone around him. As long as he doesn't have a gun, we don't have a problem. He gets to go through his life being terrified of literally everything, and nobody needs to die. There was that story of the couple that was like walking on the sidewalk outside of someone's house, and the guy got scared and just started firing at them. If only they didn't have a gun, then this wouldn't have happened. We're gonna talk about Ralph Yarl again in a second. If only they didn't have a gun, people would be alive. That was the determining factor. It wasn't the person or their totally needless fear. It was the fact that they had an easy way to kill people from far away. Anyway, he's at least been charged, but he's not the only one. Let's jump now to this update. Andrew Lester is the 84-year-old who has now been identified as the one who shot Ralph Yarl just a short time ago. Now, thankfully, the update is that he has been charged with first-degree assault and armed criminal action in the shooting of Ralph Yarl. You can see Andrew Lester here in this shot. That's the individual who set all of this off, and of course, Ralph Yarl will remind you that his family has a GoFundMe for both the legal effort as well as the medical expenses. If you're not familiar with the story, he's a 16-year-old high schooler, had just been trying to pick his brothers up when he went to the wrong address and rang the doorbell twice, and that was all it took for Andrew Lester to decide that he was going to execute this young boy. Now, here's how he tells it. He says that he was in his bed when he heard his doorbell ring and grabbed a handgun before answering, adding that he was, quote, scared to death by Yarl's size. He stated he believed someone was attempting to break into the house and shot twice through an exterior storm door within a few seconds of opening the main door. Yarl was shot twice, struck in the left forehead and right arm. And I don't believe literally anything that this insane, likely racist old man says. The idea that you were just scared of the size of a black teenager is, look, whether it's just an excuse or a truth, racists they do overestimate the age and size of people who aren't white. That we know is the way that racists work implicitly. You believe that he was trying to break into the house? I'm not a burglar or anything, but I don't think that they teach you to ring the doorbell multiple times if you're trying to break in. That usually will alert people to your presence. So no, I don't believe literally any of this. It's good news that he's been charged. We'll see what happens. The other bit of good news, and this is honestly a miracle, but family member of Ralph Yarl said that after 3 nights in the hospital, he's now been brought home and continues to improve. I am just going to assume that he should be home after just 3 days. It's entirely possible that our healthcare system is so devastatingly broken that you only get 3 nights to recover in the hospital. But regardless, the fact that he is able to go home is a miracle after being shot twice, including in the head. And so, Mondale, what do you think about this tragic situation?
I think, and I appreciate you pointing out the fact that this man's statement should hold no water, no ground, because that second shot was not an immediate shot. It was actually after he shot this young man in the head, he then shot him. He said to him, "Don't come around here," and then shot him the second time. And if this kid wouldn't have put his hand up, that bullet wouldn't have been in his hand or been through his heart, and he probably wouldn't have lived. So we also need to tell the part that this kid not only was shot by this man, America sold this kid out when he got up and ran to 2 neighbors' house and they turned him away. And it wasn't until he got to the 3rd neighbor who said, "Get on the ground," made this kid lay on the ground with a gun pointed at him, telling him to raise his hands, and then he called the police. So this kid has been shot, blood leaking out of his hand and head, has been forced to lay on the ground again with a gun pointed at him by a neighbor who is also afraid, like you said, of the big black man who was 16-year-old honor student, bandmate. And it's absolutely disgusting that we find ourselves in this place in America where people with guns can just pretend to be afraid and say anything. This is the problem with the castle doctrine and also stand your ground. You could just say, "I was afraid," or "This person was on my property," and you can just start shooting at people as if they're hunting.
Yeah, I think that like there's no, to me at least, I'm only speaking for myself, the idea that your emotional state should determine whether something is legal or not, I think is insane. But even if you believe that there was a context where your fear justifies whatever violence you want, America doesn't get to have that. Not America, where people are trained from birth to be utterly terrified of literally everyone, but especially certain groups constantly. No, you don't get that as an excuse. We'll see what ends up turning up in this. I'm glad, thankfully, that maybe they never were going to do the charges, and it was just the protest that sprang up that caused them to. But either way, that's, I guess, the way that America works. There are charges now. We'll see what ends up happening, and just happy that Ralph somehow survived this terrible violence. With that said, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the first hour of the show. There's a lot more to come in the aftermath, though. So everyone, don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the Aftermath, everybody. I'm John Iadarola. That is Mondale Robinson. Mondale, thank you again for being here. We've got some awesome stories to jump into, including a fine opportunity to mercilessly mock Ben Shapiro. So you're not gonna wanna miss that. Before we jump into that though, I wanna get to some of your comments. By the way, I saw people in the comments who were saying that ringing the doorbell is a good way to know if a person is in the house. And by the way, I love that you guys are willing to play devil's advocate and everything. I don't think that that's what he's saying. He wasn't saying that he was worried that Ralph was going to break into his house. He said he was breaking into his house. And there is no evidence of that whatsoever. So I appreciate that you guys play devil's advocate. I like to do that as well. But I think in this case, I don't think you need to extend to this guy anything at this point, but thank you. Okay, let's see. Stephen Elliman says in a super chat, John, you're young. Today is my 59th birthday. I've been watching for years, joined as a member today. I will hide in the mountains of northern Utah off grid. I want to be known as a wild mountain dragon. Well, happy birthday, first of all. Thank you for watching. And also, I occasionally think about what it would be like to someday have money to like build a little like A-frame cabin in the woods and just get away from here. But then I realized that I like high-speed internet and I like going to like live events and stuff. So that's probably not gonna work for me. But I do like the idea of it. And someday, maybe. Need to find some, where do they have cheap land? Is that a thing anymore anywhere? Cheap land? I don't know. Anyway.
Enfield, North Carolina, John.
Really? Okay. I just saw an article that apparently there's a whole bunch, like I think millions of abandoned houses in Japan that they're selling for like super cheap, like $15,000 or something. Seems like a whole big thing, but maybe that can be a solution to some of the housing crisis here in the United States. Anyway, Enfield, thankfully, much closer than Japan though. So give it a thought. Okay, with that said, are you ready to jump into some news?
Indeed, let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. Marjorie Greene is not new to picking feuds with people. That's been a daily occurrence since she was foisted onto the national consciousness. But what I do like about recent weeks is that she is mainly lashing out at other right wingers. And honestly, I'm here for it. She's fresh off of posting photoshopped images of Lindsey Graham. Now she's attacking Ali Alexander as well as Nick Fuentes, her former buddy. So she posted this tweet. This is disgusting textbook predation of underage boys, referring to the Daily Beast's reporting on Ali Alexander's texting back and forth with underage boys, which we're gonna give you a little bit of the details of. She cites in exchange for recanting his accusation, Nick Fuentes and Alexander offered to get him a job in politics. So she's lumping both of them together and then saying the FBI should investigate, which is a big escalation. I mean, I'm pretty sure that yesterday she wanted them to be defunded to protect Donald Trump, but now she does see a role for them in attacking the other crazies on the right. If you're not familiar with the actual story, the Daily Beast has done some great reporting on it. Basically, Ali Alexander apologized Friday after being accused of asking teenage boys for sexual pictures. Critics of Nick Fuentes have alleged that he ignored claims about Alexander for some time and just continued to work with him. Ali Alexander, by the way, if you're not familiar with him, is one of the most ubiquitous figures in the MAGA movement. He's actually the guy who set up the Stop the Steal rally on January 6th. Trump wanted him to speak there, but that didn't actually happen. But he did set it up. Here is what's been alleged that has led to Marjorie Greene turning on him. In one of the interviews, a young man named Aiden Duncan, one of the victims in the story, who's been going on right-wing media sites to talk about this, described how Alexander had allegedly solicited nude pictures from him when Duncan was 15 and Alexander was 32. He claimed Alexander had promised to share his, quote, entire network with Duncan if he kept their situation secret. Boundaries are cool, he wrote, allowed to say no. However, the less you deprive me of, the less I deprive you of. But by May 2019, Alexander was annoyed that Duncan would never send him, quote, good jack-off material, according to other screenshots. And Duncan tweeted last week, when I was 15, I was naive and desperate. I thought I had no choice but to cooperate with inappropriate and humiliating requests if I wanted to make it in politics. I figured that was just the nature of the game. In response, Ali Alexander put out a statement a few days ago claiming that he's been targeted by false accusations and edited screenshots, but he is not actually saying which of the accusers are false or which of the screenshots are or are not legitimate. And apparently, by the way, online, there have been rumors of his behavior for years and years, since 2015. And it really hasn't hampered his ability to work with people in the right wing for the last 8 years, up until very recently. Mondale, what do you think?
I mean, this is par for the course. I mean, so what we're finding out is there's no such thing as Pizzagate. It's just Republicans being Republicans, or Matt Gates, whatever we want to call it, right? Like this is a pattern that we continue to see. We all know the reason that Marjorie spoke out against Nick Fuentes. He came out and said Trump shouldn't be the candidate for the Republican Party after Trump disbanded him. So this is her just, staying on brand. This is not a real attack. She doesn't want an investigation from the FBI because it may lead to stuff that she don't want the world to know about her party, that we already know. That this is more standard than we unfortunately are really willing to talk about. And I'm glad the statute of limitation for violating kids is never in this country. And I hope something happens to Ali Alexander. And the sad part about it is just what you said. He still is working with Republican candidates. He still is a figure that people are sending resources to. He still has a network that he could talk about sharing with people that's worth something. And that is absolutely disgusting when we know continued proof and information about this man continues to come out. Even Nick Fuentes has heard about this many a times and refused to act. So I tell people, instead of stopping the steal, let's find out who these stealers are and investigate them.
That is a great point. And look, assuming that these allegations are right, I was gonna say I assume, maybe I'm being naive. I guess that this is the end for him in a prominent position of right-wing politics. I guess that we will see. But you're totally right to point out that, like, it seems ridiculous when you now come out and want to imply that you're being tough on pedophiles or whatever, when you're only attacking him because you feel like you've been freed up to attack him and Nick Fuentes because they turned on you. Up until then, didn't bother you, didn't have an issue with it. And we have to speculate at this point about whether right now she would be saying this or not if Nick Fuentes hadn't done what Mondale pointed out. Or, for instance, to jump ahead to graphic 8, if Ali Alexander hadn't threatened Marjorie Greene earlier this year for her support of Kevin McCarthy for House Speaker. If Ali Alexander hadn't done that, would she be saying the FBI should investigate him? Like, if he did this stuff, then definitely, assuming that it was illegal or whatever, they should look into it. But isn't it interesting that she now thinks the FBI should pounce on him, but Donald Trump, who faces literally dozens of accusations of sexual harassment and sexual assault, she literally does not care at all about any of that. And so again, like, it would be one thing if you just weirdly didn't care about sexual assault and so you're willing to give a pass. But she is an individual in a party that is obsessed with the ideas of elites getting away with sexual crimes and grooming and all of that stuff. But when it's their people, when it's their elites, they don't care. It's only when they turn on you that all of a sudden the law matters. That's what I find so unacceptable here. Any other thoughts?
Just simple that, it is not just for Republicans, it's not restricted just to pedophilia or anything. It's about everything, right? This is the hypocrisy of this. George Santos was in New York with her, and they were fine when she thought she was gonna be able to have a rally and be able to speak and spew her hate until the New York crowd showed her how loud they can get, and she ran off and complained about New York. We know that these people have no backbone. Their platform is spewing lies as long as they're not challenged. Once you challenge them, then you become the enemy at all costs.
Yeah, 100%. By the way, I'm not gonna play the video. I didn't prep it or whatever, but like, she was doing an interview. I think it might have been with Steve Bannon or another one. All of these right-wing grifters look alike to me. And she was calling Lindsey Graham a traitor and all that. Like, she is setting fire to so many of them. If I was a Republican, I would be worried. But as the person on the outside, there have been worse news cycles than her turning on all of the other grifters. Anyway, with that said, we're gonna mix it up and talk about a movie in just a sec. First, I wanna read a few comments, including Riallen has been a member for 28 months, sent me a bunch of squirrels and dragon emojis. Thank you for that. Seven Dust has been here for 3 months. Thank you so much. Curtis Randolph, member for 8 months, says, how did Crow find out the private travel schedule of an unacquainted junior South Carolina justice in 1998 in order to arrange a free off-the-record 5-hour hangout on his private jet? That is one of many, I think, great questions for Harlan Crow and all that. It was just revealed that he was giving Clarence Thomas's mother free rent for the last 7 or 8 years, like 150,000 plus in benefit of free rent. Like, it's bribery. Again, if you were to put $5,000 in a paper bag and hand it to someone, that's bribery. But $155,000, I guess, is just cool. Weird. Anyway, Spank Spider Dragon, member for 9 months, says, Johnny, I've been watching TYT since 2015. It was your charm and awesome reporting and good looks that kept me watching. I'm uncomfortable now. Keep up good work, Mr. Pie. Well, thank you for that. Thank you for watching. I hope that we don't lose you as a viewer, as I inevitably and at an increased pace degrade physically, but I guess we'll see together. Anyway, Meredith Putvin says, my grandfather always had guns and taught us to respect them. Good. My father, by the way, had some guns. He was a hunter, although he hunted with a bow, but he used to go to a shooting range and shoot, but he didn't feel like it was his God-given right to own a bazooka, and he secured the firearms, by the way. Anyway, finally, May Money to Building. Hey, May Money says, no one cares about women's sports. No one cares about women, obviously. I'm so annoyed by these jokers, being sarcastic there about the right wing. Which Queen of Oakland Dragon is angry today? I can tell, May Money. Thank you for your comment. And with that said, why don't we jump into one of the most pathetic displays I've seen in a few days, starting with this.
Disney has been on the retreat socially since people decided they don't wish to invest in their product. We'll see if Disney continues to double down. The great suspicion is that in Frozen 4, they'll make Elsa a lesbian. By the way, if they do that, it is the end of Disney as a company. Predict it. You can write it down. It is April 17th. If they do that in Frozen 4, they'll destroy Disney, like thoroughly destroy it.
Dear God, as was pointed out by, I believe, Jordan Ewell, that is a 39-year-old man who is losing his mind at the possibility that a cartoon might be gay. He believes, seriously, he would have you believe, that will be the end of the massive media Goliath of Disney if Elsa is gay in Frozen 4. I think he means Frozen 3, because Frozen 3 is not out yet. Maybe he's just that worried that like, oh, they're not gonna do it in Frozen 3, but someday in the Frozen cinematic universe, she'll be gay. He said, Mondale, the great suspicion is. What a weird little man. What a weird little. Why is that your suspicion? And if it was true, why the hell would you care about it?
I mean, we're talking about Frozen and Elsa. Why? What's wrong with Ben? Can someone give him a hug? And get lies. They don't even care that Disney, we know for a fact because it's on paper, Disney's earnings went up the last 2 quarters. And the last quarter, it went up, it increased by 21%. 21%. What is he like? They don't care. They just say anything. And I think you're right. I think he intentionally said part 4, not 3, because he knows like I can run with this for a while. He can bend and raise money off this lesbian Elsa. Like, really? You're concerned with the lesbian Elsa in a what is becoming a hotly contested Republican primary that you should be talking about? We see that Asa Hutchinson, a former Arkansas governor, has announced he's in the race. Why are you not talking about that? Why are you not talking about these mass shootings that continue to happen in this country? With your patriotic ass. I'm confused at what they're doing over there. And Ben is absolutely being Ben. Disgusting.
Yeah. It's just like, okay, Ben, I wanna ask you a serious question. Let's say that they decide to make her lesbian or whatever, which Disney is still an incredibly conservative company. They're unlikely to do that, but let's say that they do. What do you think is going to happen in the movie? It's Frozen. What do you like? Is she gonna sit side by side on 2 thrones with another woman? Oh dear God. Is she gonna peck someone on the cheek? It's a Disney movie. What explicit sexual acts do you think Elsa is gonna be getting up to in that movie? It's not gonna happen. It's not a thing. But the thing is, we don't even need to speculate because we already know the Buzz Lightyear movie had the most chaste lesbian peck on the lips that has ever been captured in animated form, and they lost their minds over it. These are truly broken people. Now, look, some of it is, I think, as you point out, wholly performative. Ben Shapiro has to fill a certain number of hours every day, and he does not want you to realize the actual problems facing Americans. So he has to fill that time with something that will distract you. So he sits around, he thinks of like a cartoon character or a candy mascot, and then he says, "Oh God, is the Trix rabbit going to be asexual? Okay, are the Keebler elves possibly trans? Like that's how they fill their time or whatever. But he also, let's keep it real, he does think about this stuff. He's got the background or whatever. Like clearly he wants you to believe that he is a religious conservative and that is an honest part of his politics. I think that he plays it up for the camera or whatever. But these guys, when it comes to sexuality and look, just let's say it, sex, they're fundamentally broken inside. Whether it's bad experiences that they've had in the past or inadequacies that they haven't worked through because they feel like they can't go to therapy, they are broken when it comes to these topics. And just keep it out of Frozen. It has nothing to do with that. Anyway, it's just gonna be a movie with a stupid snowman, and it's gonna make $1 bajillion. That's what's gonna happen with Frozen. Anyway, okay, we're gonna move to our last topic in just a sec. Let me read a couple more comments before we go speculating about the sexuality of a cartoon. Your Highness 420 Dragon has been with us on Twitch for 13 months. Thank you so much for that. Ian Sutherland sent in a super chat saying, have you read the report from Nova Scotia on the mass shooting in Porto Pic? I am not familiar with that actually. I apologize, but thank you for raising that. Gabby Matz, member for 28 months, says I saved this milestone for my birthday. Happy to share with John and the mayor. Happy birthday. Glad to have you here. I don't know which one it is. I'm just going to assume that you, like virtually everyone watching, is younger than me, and I'm gonna be very jealous of you. So anyway, Mama Bear Dragon, member for 28 months, says, I think time goes by faster when older because there's more time in the rear view to compare it to. A day lasted forever as a kid, over in a blink now. That is definitely true. It is weird. Like you would just go out and hang out with your friends and it would just last a summer, one day. And now it's like, I feel like I wake up every minute, basically. Okay. Let's see. Hold on one sec. Todd Shisham says, don't let Ben Shapiro see Strange World. His head may explode. On second thought, let him watch it. I haven't seen that yet, so I don't know what you're referencing, but now I'm worried for his sake. Saberio says in a super chat, gay Elsa, wait till they find out the voice of Elsa is Idina Menzel and she was in Rent, a movie about gay people and HIV/AIDS. Oh, I'm sure that bothers them too. By the way, she said that she's perfectly fine with it. It's not up to her if the character ends up being gay or whatever, but she said that she's fine with it. Okay, with that said, let's move to one more topic, sort of related, starting with this.
Television writers are being paid less money for these complex, multifaceted, unique narratives that bring companies like Warner Bros., Disney, and Netflix billions upon billions of dollars every year. And now, writers are understandably at their limits. And soon, that could affect you.
If push comes to shove, a strike is incredibly important to show these companies that we mean business and that we won't stand for them trying to take our livelihoods in Hollywood.
So there you're seeing some great work giving an idea of some of the stakes here. Well, we've taken a massive step towards that with the unions representing thousands of television and movie writers, the writers who produce the vast majority of the content that many of us watch on a daily basis, saying just yesterday that they had overwhelming support for a strike. It was 97.85% in support of a strike there. Now, that doesn't mean that it's necessarily gonna happen. Sometimes you'll have this sort of vote happen and then an immediate scramble to have some sort of deal right afterward. But this is a strong sign that there is solidarity, that they're willing to go the distance. And I think that these studios are really playing with fire because you can lose a lot of money really fast in this sort of situation. And I think they're about to learn how valuable these writers truly are. By the way, the last time in 2017, there was a last minute deal that was struck with studios not long after 96%, slightly less in that case, voted to authorize a strike. But the last time there was a full one was 2007. That dragged for 100 days. It cost the Los Angeles economy $2.1 billion. And if for some of you, you might be so young you don't know, but that was a massive disruption to shows ended as a result of that. Movies were called off as a result of that. And there is now so much entertainment being produced on these streaming services that requires a lot of incredibly talented and skilled writing labor that I think they're about to find out again, as I said, how valuable these writers are. They've been treated horribly. The pay situation is terrible. We might get into some of the specifics, but I'm very eager to see how many concessions they can get from these studios. But Mondale, what do you think?
I think for all of us that care about workers and workers' rights should be extremely celebratory about the fact that 97.85% support a strike. When we see businesses like Disney, like Netflix and Warner Bros. Making billions of dollars off of these people's labor, we should not be happy at the exploitation. And I think, I'm a firm believer that we should be striking more often in this country because people are not being paid enough, where people can cut people's bonuses but still make money. So yes, strike.
Yeah, 100%. People in the chat I can see are talking about, what effect it had the last time. Like, yeah, I remember what effect it had on Heroes. By the way, and people are saying on Battlestar Galactica as well. I need to look into when exactly that hit. But yeah, I mean, look, you'll see it immediately. Like if we jump ahead of Graphic 5, Saturday Night Live, late shows like Stephen Colbert and all of that, they'll be dark immediately. Like you can't operate on a daily basis without your writers. You might not realize the effect in terms of shows and movies for some time because of course there's a longer time horizon for those things to be produced. But if it drags on, then you'll start to feel that as well. You'll have announcements of shows being postponed and coming back. God only knows that Marvel has this like 8-year roadmap plotted out. Well, say goodbye to that for some time. The people who actually make the movies and make the shows so often get the recognition that they deserve. And obviously, look, actors and all that are great. They do great work, all that, directors, all of that. But they sometimes get recognition. The writers, the visual effects artists, the ones who literally make it possible for you to have these stories are so often abused as these companies make more and more money that I hope that this is an opportunity where we see the balance of power shifted back. These companies can make incredible profits and still pay their writers what they deserve, give them the benefits they deserve, actually acknowledge their work. I'll just briefly mention, one union leader has talked about the concept of these mini rooms that are being set up. Basically, before you would normally have a writer's room for a project, they do these little, they're saying labor camps, where they do a bunch of the writing, but it hasn't actually been a project that's greenlit, so you don't have to pay them as if they were real writers. Like these sorts of tactics, get out of here with that stuff. Like they're doing amazing work. They deserve to be compensated for their work, and so hopefully those are the sorts of things that get worked out during this. Any final comment, Mondale?
I think people should pay attention to what you just said. These green rooms, these little rooms, these mini rooms are exploitation of people. And I don't understand why in California, Georgia, and New York, places where we make a lot of movies in this country, we're not investigating this, because these seem like labor violations to me. And it's absolutely disgusting that people are working to make money for these large institutions and not being paid for it. It is absolutely disgusting to me.
Yeah, we're gonna see. We're getting close. We're getting close. Okay, buddy, that is unfortunately all the time we have for the program today. Big thank you to Mondale Robinson. Always glad to have you on. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And for all of you out there, thank you for watching. Of course, there's a lot coming up on TYT today. Indisputable is gonna be up in just a few. Little reminder that this Thursday, we do have our tier 3 members hang out on YouTube. So if you are a member or would like to become one, then you'll have that to look forward to. For now though, stay safe out there, stay sane out there, and I'll see you soon.